Good morning.
So if you looked at that note, we don't start till January 6th.
Yeah,
We're keeping things as they are until January 6th. So today we're just announcing this in advance. So
yeah,
we're not starting at 8:30 today. We're starting at 8:30 on January 6th.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree. It's
Okay.
just since you sent me so many useful notes, I just wondered if you wanted to discuss any. But it's all good. I've added Bob Horn to our schedule, and so
So
that's
I added him to that schedule. I added him last week and I
yeah, yeah.
updated.
You added him to the spreadsheet, which is perfect. I just put him on the website page that's public.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm now going to because I have a calendar for that. I'm going to put them into that calendar. So if someone subscribes, they get that. Hang on. So
Hmm.
20th, Bullhorn. Okay. So only this event. Good. Good. So now that's properly done. So that's good. Oh, I have to do a lot of drinking. Oh yeah. Did you see the email from Jamie? That was kind of surprising.
Oh, I think that's not. I mean, I think it's great. We should do it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's good. Andrew, and a nice surprise to see her today.
Yeah,
Um,
you don't have to be here today. Wednesday, you're going to present for your last time. You're not being paid by the Future of Text grant anymore, right? I just approved your hours to the 15th of December.
Right. I was told it was through the 21st.
Being paid through my lab now.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Who said the 31st?
21st is what I heard.
Who said that?
I don't remember. I just have it on my calendar.
Would you check and see? Because they told me the 15th.
Okay. Where would I find that? I guess I'll take a look in
Ask Jen
Workday.
Barnes. Jen Barnes.
Okay.
By the way, the
Will do.
university pays, it's 2 weeks in advance. So cutoff
Okay.
date, and then they get paid 2 weeks later for that time. So it's
Yeah,
not like,
I actually have termination notice effective on the 31st. So end of the month.
yeah, but that's your last, you should have been paid up to that point.
Oh, okay. So you're saying last work day would have been
When is the next? So
last
yeah,
week?
yeah, because don't you get paid 2 weeks? Just check with Jen.
Yeah. I'll check with Jen.
If you're here today, then we'll just, not a problem. We'll just pay you through the lab. But if it's going through the grant, that's fine too. We got the money in the
Okay.
grant. I just want to make any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. You said this would be Jen Barnes.
Yeah, Jen Barnes, ask her.
He's got all the answers.
Well, we have three people that check our funding, right? Jen, contracts and money, Min, budget money, Kaylee and Diane from the grants office, following the proposal and money. So I'm overseen by three groups.
Dini, while we're waiting for the others, I just in Slack gave you a link to the 2-minute video that we did, Fabian and I did last Thursday,
Okay.
with a question of should I put that on our FTL webpage in the same way we have Andrew coming up on Wednesday to record what I'll edit for something nice on there. Maybe I'm not sure if we should have this as an intro video or not.
I haven't seen it, so maybe we should play it today. I'm sure it's going to be great. I just haven't seen it.
Starring Fabian. Yeah, it's great. Uh, yeah, that's great. Hi, Fabian. Um,
Hello, everyone.
Good
hello.
morning.
So, So Mark has been helping me surprisingly, and I know he'll watch the video. He's out today with the university thing, but he's been helping me with the AI stuff this weekend, texting back and forth. He's been really questioning it, as you might expect. And as a result, I have implemented what I talked about last week, but I changed the name. It's no longer Expand, it's now called Spark. So that was the update.
What's called Spark?
The feature where when you're writing something and you get a little stuck and you wonder where you can look next. So you select the text, and in the context menu at the top, it says Spark. So it runs a prompt on that saying, analyze this using McLuhan's tetrad. Tell me how 5 different professions would look at this maybe, and give me some off-the-wall suggestions to spark thinking. So yeah, I just wanted to put it on the recording that Mark helped me change the name from Expand to Spark. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Frode. Good to see you.
Good to see
My leg is
you.
doing much better, so
Oh, that's excellent.
it's good to be back on Monday.
Good, good. I put a video link in the URL here to a 1 minute video. If you all look at it separately, it's probably better actually. That's what we did last. I'm just wondering if it's appropriate for us to post, and if so, where.
On the laptop, organizing my knowledge map, learning different concepts, spatially, and yet.
Okay.
So should we post it, and if so, where? Should it maybe be under the authorship page on FTL, or?
Well, I guess it's part of year 2, or maybe it's the end of year 1. Maybe it's a transition. So maybe we can even have a period of transition between year 1 and year 2 to show handoff. Because Fabian is not yet on contract. So I don't want to start putting things in year 2 yet in case Sloan's looking at everything and wondering what the hell we're doing. You know what I mean? So maybe have like year 1 final, or maybe like, I think it's a good idea to have like an intermediate time period, handoff period.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So that's why I didn't just automatically post it like I would normally do. I suggest we just leave it. It was useful for Fabian and me to do it, to go through it. It helped us understand better where we're coming from. And I changed the icon slightly. I don't know if you can even notice, but just tiny little thing, like there's no more wireframe, including of the icons themselves. They lean, but there's no wireframe underneath. We made it into a semi-transparent, just little. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy not to show it, because as Fabian pointed out when we made it, it's like maybe we're showing too much for this stage.
Well, I think it's worth showing. I mean, I think it's part of our output, so I think it's worth showing. So what I'm saying is it can either be the end of year 1 or some sort of like in between period, like here's where we're thinking that we're going for year 2, a teaser, year 2 teaser, trailer, teaser trailer.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now on the website, so we can all look at it live and see. Yeah, if you go to Future Text Lab and then you click on authorship, you can see, and then we can play with that. I don't know, maybe something like that.
Can you put a caption on it that says this is this is a first view, first experience with what we're thinking about for year two, captured in Brussels on December blah 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 2024 in preparation for 2025. I think that would be helpful to contextualize what you're doing. What I like, maybe what we can do for year two, and for all of those postings is have it. So when I work with my students and they make a project, I have them prepare one line statement about what it is. Like what you're looking at is blah, blah, blah. That way people are understanding what they're looking at, right?
Yeah.
So for each of those videos that we link, like in the days that Andrew was putting things, in this version, you're going to see we updated blah, blah, blah. Next version. In this version, you can see that we've rethought the blah, blah, blah. We could have a one statement progression that is easy for people to digest. Nothing, no long 500 words, just this video shows.
So
That makes sense.
that's a good point, Dene. So it makes me wonder. We will, of course, continue to have development on Wednesdays. And for the second hour, where other than Fabian, you and me, people will be there. Should we maybe do a short recorded bit where we go through Fabian's update like we did with Andrew and make that bit public exactly the way you're saying? Or do you think it should be in writing from time to time if there is an update?
Well, I think what we did for Andrew was really valuable. Every week we had a video clip. But what I'm saying is that video clip, there should be a one-line statement, just like we just did, like you just did here. And that way people can click and see, oh, this is what they're doing. Oh, this is what this is about. This before they even get to the video, we're telling them what's salient about that particular thing. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think we will take it quite slow the first month so that I don't make a mistake on the upload and we all look at it, see if it's the right kind of writing and so on. Yes. By the way, Peter, I'm not sure you were made aware on Wednesday, but starting in January, these meetings will start half an hour later.
Should we? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, both days of the week.
Wednesdays is development only. That's going to start an hour later.
Okay, so Monday will be half an hour later. Wednesday will be a whole hour later. Got it.
Let's go through then the updates today, and we could repeat this on Wednesday, so that because next week we're going to be out for Christmas. So there's some things that Frode and I worked out this week. We met with the vice president of research and try to map out year two so that we can move smoothly next year. And so what we want to do today is just start to get you folks to see what we're about to do, right? So first, year two starts on Monday, January 6th. So we're still in year one until then, right? Year two, we're going to be implementing some changes. Year two ends December 19th. So right at the time we're kind of sewing up this year one so that we can kind of pull things together, because I have to write a report. So I have to have all the data in. So that starting that 20th, I have at least 2 weeks to get the final report in. And the final report is like 12 pages long. So it's much longer than the last one. Okay, and then the Future of Text Monday meetings are going to be a little bit different. Frode and I are going to be meeting from 8 to 8:30 so that we have time to get ourselves organized before everybody shows up. And Frode, we were talking about how we're going to do this. Did we want to let everybody meet in the Future Text space and just have a waiting room set up? Or did you and I want to meet in my space and then jump in at 8:30? And
Yeah,
I guess we want to know what people think.
I've been thinking about that, and I just realized because we've been throwing around the 4 to 6 UK time so widely, It may be someone we haven't seen in many months suddenly shows up. So I think you and me have the meeting in your room while we run this one on mute. So if someone does show up, I can just for a second say, I'm sorry, we're not starting for another half an hour. So it's not just waiting room and they think they got the time wrong. I don't know. Something
Okay,
like
that
that.
sounds good. Is that okay with everybody else? Great.
And Andrew, if you get bored, especially on Mondays, even if you just want to have it half on like a podcast, you must feel you are extremely welcome in the community, just to make that clear.
Thanks. I do feel like I'm still welcome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And time permitting, I very much might stop by.
It may be the background buzz you need for your real coding work in the foreground. Sometimes it's good to have TV on in a way, you know. But there, also to emphasize, just like Dene said, there's absolutely no expectation. You know, it's just nice to see you. So a few other things on our schedule, guys. If you look at our website, I'm now split.
Hey, Frode, did we want to finish talking about how the meetings are, the announcements and stuff? Can we do that?
Yeah, I thought I was, but yeah, I was going to talk about a separate bit. So let's finish this first, of course.
Yeah, because we talked about at the retreat, the one informal and formal presentations. And so Frodo's been putting together the schedule. And the first person on our schedule to speak is Bob Horn, and he's speaking on the 20th. So Frodo, where's that site? You want to show us the
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, that's perfect then, because that's exactly what I was planning to do. So on our Future Text Lab website, under weekly meetings, I don't have schedule and journal on the same page. So if you click on schedule, please, you'll see Bob is there. He's currently just a sentence. I haven't put up more about him. Most people in our community knows him anyway. But please notice on top, it says add to calendar. The calendar itself, for those who choose to subscribe, it also has Bob Horn on the 20th. So it's not just a repeating thing. And Dini, I was thinking at the same time, one second, I'm sorry. Where did my window go? The discussion on non-Euclidean space text. I think we should probably try to schedule now and decide what that day is. Is it a theme or is it things to read? Because the earlier we do that, I think it'll really help define what we're about for year two.
Are we going to read or have someone present on this?
That's the question.
What is recommended that we read for this?
That's,
you know?
That's another good question. I have no idea. I think Fabian has some ideas though, maybe.
Yeah, I I should not do this, but if yeah, let me put it that way. If nobody else wants to do a presentation on this, I would do it like 15 minutes maximum, just to ensure we're talking about the same thing. What are the current VR, AR, whatever experiment that exists? What's the main concept? And then do the discussion or suggest articles or whatnot. But again, like that's just think of me as a backup to introduce the topic.
I think there might be people in the room that may not understand what non-Euclidean means. So maybe starting off with what that definition is, like what does it mean? What is Euclidean? What's non-Euclidean? And why are we interested in non-Euclidean? I think would be the question, right? What does that net us in the end? Why? Why are we interested in non-Euclidean?
Do you mean right now or on the day?
No, later. I mean, I think when you do your presentation, that'd be important for people to hear that, right? It's like, oh, that's really cool. Why are you interested in that? Why? What is that? Why for XR? So I think that's the overarching question.
Yes.
And I think the thing to think about is as we put these presentations together, we should be asking the research question, like, why? Like, why are we interested in mapping hypertext? What does mapping hypertext net us for mapping in XR? What can we learn from Bob Horn and his work from the past? So just starting off with that research intellectual question and will get us further than just listening to a presentation. Yes, Frode?
I think that's perfect. This is such a nice meeting. It's just so bloody nice. Right. Please reload the schedule page as I comment on what you both said. it's probably good to have in brackets or something if it's a theme discussion or presentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it makes perfect sense that Fabian does a 15-minute intro to text and non-Euclidean space, maybe in concert with Dene, because I'm sure you guys would talk about it from very separate perspectives, for a theme discussion. So I'm thinking on a normal Monday, we have half an hour demo time for us or for someone else, right? So for the themed and presentations, we should still have an intro time. We shouldn't just dump people into it. So that means that I guess the one doing the intro 15 minutes on a themed or a presentation will then be the moderator for that Monday. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, and I think we want to do too is if there's a reading associated, we should put a link to the reading. And so I sent you the link to the mapping hypertext in the archive.org space, and Bob resent that again this morning. But if you need me to resend it, let's make a link there. Say, please read this, scan it before the meeting if you can. It makes no sense for us to have a lab reading if nobody's reading anything.
I can't see the Bob link. Where did you send that?
I sent it before, but I'll resend it.
Yeah, please. Okay, so I'm now just typing in that the format for all the Mondays, how they start and how we're doing them. So just give me a minute. Sorry, horrible cold this weekend.
There it is.
Thank you.
To continue about how things are going to change for this coming year. We're going to be sharing moderation duties. So Fabienne, you'll be moderating your own presentation. Frode and I are going to share moderation. Like, for example, when Bob Horn comes, since he's been invited by me, I'll moderate that one. Frode will moderate the ones that he's doing, and we'll just kind of share those responsibilities. And that's something we talked about at the retreat. We're going to continue to record the meetings, but only Mondays will be posted online like we've been doing, so no changes there. When there's news about the future of text, Frode and I will send out a joint communication. And like today, we're sharing the news together with you so that it's coming from both of us. And then in terms of the outputs, the book, we're going to make joint decisions about planning the book, such as articles submitted, blah, 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 publishable formats. We're going to share that responsibility in year 2. Symposium will also be shared. We may be working with Google on this one, so that's something we're going to hopefully talk to Mar about this week. But I need to know something. So if it's in Vancouver, I need to get the room tied up again because it takes about a year to get those rooms booked. Future of text dialogues. We're going to draft ideas about inclusivity and DEI together and then share it with you folks to add to it. As you know, I was responsible for the DEI statement for Sloan, so I need to pull that up out of archive, and that will become kind of like the blueprint for how we move forward with inclusivity. And also, I wrote the inclusivity for the ELO for conferences and things like that. So I'm pretty comfortable writing those. And the future of text and XR, we're both going to provide input in the development of the project. And we'll figure out who's going to do what when the time comes. So that's it. So I think that's how we're going to move forward for year 2 to we've learned a lot from year 1. And hopefully things will be smooth and everybody will feel appreciated.
Yeah. I'm just posting our thing. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, just a quick remark. Don't hesitate to pull me in for this kind of things. I mean, to moderate or whatnot. I honestly step in on my own for this, but assuming the involvement grows, yeah, I can also do this because I understand it's a load emotionally, cognitively, it's demanding. So yeah, don't hesitate to pull me in if it helps. And if you do, don't also hesitate to adjust. Like if I don't know, if I'm moderating and I'm too harsh or I don't balance enough or whatnot, same. Like if you believe I should do some even training for this, because I remember, Dino, you mentioned there were some of those, or that you have resources for this. Same, like don't hesitate. I want to learn. I want to help if I can. So if it helps, let me know.
I mean, that's nice. What I was really wanting last year, because the training I had to go through for running a grant, it was 9 modules. It took me 3 hours, but it covered everything that was like what is intellectual property, right? At a public institution, in the world, in the United States, in the world. What is ethics? Like what is ethical, what's not? And a lot of little things like that. What is to be inclusive? I mean, it was like there were 9 modules, each one with a different topic, and I had to go through that and pass the tests. There's tests. And I begged the university to let Frode go through it too, because Frode doesn't have access to that at Southampton. And the university, just to say this, the university has never worked with people outside academe in general, right? Generally, when we work in partnerships, we work with other academics. So it was really unusual for us to work with non-academics. And they just assumed that people working, with us on these projects already have their training or are requested to take training. And I contacted, I don't know, I spent probably 6 or 7 hours contacting different departments in Pullman and Washington State and Vancouver, asking. I said, look, I'll even pay for it. We've got money in the grant we can find, we can get Sloan to approve it. No, not going to do it. So I went through the training myself, and I tried to mind dump things to Frode when he was here end of January last year. But it's not the same as having to pass the test. They would not even give me the money until I took the training and passed the test. And so I think a lot of the hiccups we had would have been nipped in the bud if folks, if everybody involved in the project could have gone through training, because I felt like I was relaying information that was unusual, right? And in the tech world, here in the United States at least, Fabian, there's a lot of these stop gaps aren't here. People just kind of do what they want. As you can see with Elon Musk, right? He just does whatever he feels like as he buys his way in to the Trump administration, for example. Jeff Bezos just capitulated to Trump. So the notion of ethics is not present in the minds of our tech bros in the US. So how do we, the normal people that have to live here, live around the world to deal with this stuff? Because Trump is going to affect you too in Brussels. How are we going to function? Do we fall in line and do the same thing, dog eat dog? Or do we treat each other with respect? Right? And that's the question. And the university expects me to treat you with respect and you to do the same for each other. So, all right, Frode, I'm sorry. I went on a tirade.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to learn all that on the fly. Interesting first year, of course. I'm suggesting here, Dene, that if you reload the schedule again, please. I think we should get rid of the book club, because you just asked a very good question a few minutes ago along the themed discussion. Sometimes they can have reading material ahead of time, right? So then it becomes a book club. Or should we, I know we're not using the term book club, but do we need a separate thing for that? Or should we just have themed or presentations? Because you've now given me usefully a reading thing for Bob Horn for those who are interested.
Well, I was thinking about it as lab read. We're reading stuff together. And so, and we expect people to read in advance. And that's what a book club expects. Although I have to say, the last book club meeting I went to with my friends at Niche, nobody read the damn book but me. It was really boring. They're like, I didn't read the book. Okay, we're just there and drink wine for an hour. That's not very much fun.
But,
And so,
yeah.
well, it was, but still.
But,
So I think rather than book club, maybe call it lab readings.
but do we need it, considering we should read for the themed discussions? I mean, right now, there's nothing there, but I think it would be really useful to put in some readings for that as well, that primarily you and Fabienne could put in, but also the rest of us if we come up with something. You know, whether it's a series of tweets, YouTube videos, articles, just so people can be a bit clued in. Well, yeah, so and just an organization for the schedule. Do we want to have 3 categories or 2? We have one for presentation. Do we need separate for discussions? What I'm thinking, wondering.
Well, we only had 2. We have the small group meetings and the more focused. And the focused is the presentations. The theme days are just our normal days. So open office, I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have a theme. We just don't have it yet.
Oh, okay. That's really good to hear because
Remember that? Remember at the retreat we talked about 10-minute with the 10-minute, the 20-minute, or 10-person, the 20-person, and the 50-person. The 10 is our normal Monday group, and we have some sort of theme discussion around that among ourselves. The 20 people or more, we're going to announce, please join us. And we want about 20 people there, and that's the Bob Horn. So call it whatever you want, but essentially the open office will become a theme, even if it's kickoff, getting started, you know?
right. So that's I've seen it differently. I've seen it as in open office is just us and whoever wants to join. Then we have the special ones that I tell people in the community, send an email, which are the presentations and the theme discussions, because people seem to like the theme discussions.
Well, if Fabienne's making a presentation, then just call it presentation by Fabienne.
Yeah, well, for the non-Euclidean one, I think it shouldn't just be Fabienne presenting for that. I think you as well, because I think your perspectives are really good, and it shouldn't necessarily, unless you want to do a full presentation, you know, just do an intro and you guys moderate it. Well, let me rephrase our issue. What should we email the community to alert them about? Presentations only or presentations and theme discussions? Because so far I think they like theme discussions.
Okay, so we I guess I want clarity at the retreat, and Fabienne helped me remember here. At the retreat and in the minutes from the retreat, we discussed the regular meetings on Monday, the 10 people, small group. And then we discussed a larger formal presentation that we want about 20 people at. Then we talked about the symposium, which is about 50 people, or something really, really special. So we had 3 different perspectives. So my
Yeah.
question is, how does your system here with themes and presentations fit within what the group said they wanted?
That's easy. The way that I see it, at least, is easy. I see it as the 20 people thing is themed and presentations.
Okay.
But the question I'm asking as well is, should we add reading lists to the theme discussions, or should we have reading lists for specific reading meetings?
Well, I think if we want a fulsome discussion with people knowledgeable about the topic, we may want to have maybe shorter readings for the theme,
Okay.
maybe longer for the presentation. Fabienne's had his hand up for quite a while. Fabienne.
So I lost track a little bit. 2 things though. The number one is yes, I in terms of let's say training for either managing discussion or whatnot. Just I did some training for UNICEF because I was part of the innovation lab back then. I want to say 6 years ago or so, and some of it was about communication and inclusivity, and a lot of it might not sound obvious to everyone, and there was a bit of test in it to understand. There were other things related like to physical security and whatnot. So basically, I think it's pretty much always good at the very least in order to like step back from time to time to not be just on the trenches and the technicalities of it. It's like, why are we actually doing this together? So I would recommend it to do this kind of things to everyone. But then indeed, it begs the question of like, can we actually have access to quality materials to train for this kind of things? But I do think it's positive for anybody who can do it. So I really, it's never wasted time basically. For the book club, yes. So in terms of naming or not naming, I think basically, and I mentioned it on Discord, like any excuse for us to like try to tackle some challenging materials. Well, I think no, it was on the last call on Wednesday to tackle some challenging materials, and because it's the future of text, I think it makes sense to try to go also through this kind of material, namely. Yeah, challenging book can also be other format, can be like Python notebook. It doesn't have to be for programmers, but some other way to do text. So I think it would make sense to me. And then on, yes, Dini, everything you mentioned, like the 10, 50 and symposium or 10, 20 symposium, that's also how I remember it. What I also just wanted to say now that I have the floor is that my idea for that starting thing on a non-Euclidean geometry is to spark conversation. It's not to make a formal presentation, say this is the truth, it's just like this is the basis, and then we discuss all together. And if somebody else has materials to share, experience, etc., I think it's that would be great. It's not to say, hey, here is 1 hour formal presentation.
Right. So then that aligns with what Frode is talking about, and that is the theme and presentation are both for kind of larger group, right? 20-ish people, but the reading is, we can have readings that tie to them, but one is a very formal presentation, which Bob is happy to make. And then you're sparking conversation.
Yes.
Knowing Bob, he's going to talk for quite a while.
So I think I got this down. Please reload the page again and read the format section. See if that is what we all agreed on.
Yeah, can you put a comma after Bob Horn's name?
Yeah, I can. And there's
And
no
italicize hypertext mapping, so it's the book. They'll know it's the book.
sure. Done. Hang on. Hang on.
And should we put Fabian's name as a leader of the text and non-Euclidean spacious leading that theme? The
No.
URL should be right on there. Peter, the URL should be right on that hypertext mapping, is it not?
Hang on. When you click on Bob Horn hypertext mapping, it loads the further information, which then links to the book. So on that further information, we can write, like a paragraph of what this is. So it's not just suddenly to the book.
Yeah.
If you click on text and non-Euclidean space, I have written there that it's introduced by, but considering it's a brief introduction for a longer discussion, I'm not so sure if we need to list the introducer under the theme. Otherwise, it may seem a bit like a presentation. You know what I mean?
Why not say led by Fabienne?
But
Say
aren't you
led
both
by.
going to lead it? I think Fabian should do something brief and you run that one.
Okay, well, just say led by Fabian and Dene then.
If you click through, hang on. Hang on 1 second. I'm
And
just trying.
Fabian, one recommendation that Christine had to me was that we can contact Sloan to see if they had any kind of training materials that they ask for people to know. And I thought that would be a thing I could do if you're interested. The university has training materials. They just cost a lot of money. If I'd known I couldn't get access to them, I would have copied every word and shared that. But I didn't. I just went through the test. So Frode, we should reload again.
Yeah, reload the 2025 schedule page, please.
Okay. All right. I'm going to recommend we don't have any theme or anything on the 6th since it's our first meeting for the year, for year 2. We just kind of go through what year 2 is going to be like and what we're planning and just use that as the discussion. And then the 27th is still open. We may want to leave that we might want to talk about the workshop for Frode on the 27th.
Hypertext.
Yeah. We've been asked to do a workshop at the Hypertext conference in Chicago. So maybe we make that the discussion on the 27th. Like, what are we going to talk about? What should we do? And get feedback before we submit an proposal. That makes sense to everybody? And we'll be better off doing it at the end of that month than at the beginning because we'll have a sense of what we're thinking about. We'll be thinking differently than we are right now about year 2. Right now, I'm still thinking year 1. We'll be a month into just about a month of year 2 or a couple of weeks into it. That'd be helpful. Sure, perfect.
So at the end
And
of
maybe
So-
for the 6th, we can say kickoff for year 2.
Oh, you want to label all of them? Yeah, okay, that's a good
Might as
idea.
well open, instead of open office, say kickoff for year 2.
Sure.
A future of text and XR project or something like that. And that gets us all the way through the end of January. Yeah. And year 2, maybe capitalize Y in year. I'm also wondering what you guys think about, since March is Women's History Month, I would like to program March. This would be a nice thing to do to bring in some women to talk. And maybe I have a woman come in every week or a couple of times, like we're doing this on a theme talk and a formal presentation.
I think that is a very, very good idea because it is kind of a excuse to do that more, to kickstart having more. So yeah, Fabian's already done a thumbs up. Hi, Rob.
Hey, morning, Rob.
Morning.
So Rob, next year we'll be starting the meetings at 8:30 in the morning. So that's closer to you today. So that should be cool.
Yeah, sorry, I've got people working in the bathroom today and people coming to clean and my daughter coming for lunch, and it's a busy time of year.
Yeah. That's why we're not having anything. I'm not going to be here next week.
Yeah, I won't be here next week either.
I finally got Christmas decorations up this week. I did that Saturday. So the house is starting to look a little bit more cheery.
You're way ahead of me.
I'm having some parties this week. I've got my CFR group coming over Thursday night. We have our lab party Wednesday at the lab. So we're trying to get in the spirit. John's birthday Friday night. So we're gonna have a little party for him.
Wish him a happy one.
I will. He doesn't
Happy
want to get
birthday
older.
from us.
Yep.
He hates his birthday. Okay, so yeah. I actually like it. I don't mind getting older. It means I'm alive. The alternative is death.
Alternative is not the best.
Yeah, my sister died at
Oh, that.
56. I'm so grateful to be alive. I think it's sinful to not be grateful. All right, so March is going to be Women's History Month. I'll figure out programming for that. February is wide open. We should be thinking about February programming. And we can go from there. Okay.
So on this topic, if we go back to the front page, please. The schedule is nice and simple. People get it. Should we change the word journal to something else to make it clear this is past events? I'm just
How
not sure.
about I mean, I think of things like history. I mean, we're trying to capture history. We're trying to capture progress.
It's a tough one.
You can do journal and put a colon and say recordings and or documentation of progress or something like that.
I think I may have gotten it. 1 second. please, no, hang on. I have double space there. Okay, please reload the front page again. I just changed the order of them, and I think it makes sense now.
Okay.
The schedule of upcoming meetings is available, as is a journal of recordings of past meetings.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'm not going to turn this into a long chat every time we meet for this, but yeah. Right, good. Looking at my notes here. Oh yeah, just to update you guys a little bit on the trip to Brussels, which is quite pleasant, especially with the Vision Pro and the return journey. 2 hours is good for a movie. Not very productive, but there you go. What we did is we made the background darker in Fabian's world to reflect closer to Andrew's world, so that there's a visual continuity. When, of course, you are in AR, that won't matter, but when you are in VR, at least we can start where we finished, right? Yeah, that was it. That was the only other thing. So Dene, the question to you, the agenda is still only for Wednesdays, right?
Yeah, we should have some sort of plan. I mean, what we're doing right now is planning Monday. So I think that plan is online. The agenda is for the Wednesday development.
Yeah.
And the
that-
Wednesday meetings, one thing we didn't talk about when I was making those announcements is the Wednesday dev meetings are just dev meetings. We're not talking about anything else. And it's going to be Frode and Fabian and me on Wednesday. So unless we need to invite people in, it's going to be the three of us.
Yeah, and it's going to be an hour, and then at least in the beginning. But just a brief one. Right, good. So we're doing really well on
There's one
time.
more thing, Rob. This doesn't start till January 6th. We're still on year one time.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'll have some questions on January 6th then.
okay, so I have a request. Last week, Monday, I presented a feature, an author that was a bit not very well presented, a bit haphazard. Could we carve out 10 minutes for that now because it leads into XR, including me contextualizing it a bit better?
Say that
Okay.
one more time.
The thing that I tried to present last Monday, where it was very haphazard, I had a thought, put it in Keynote. Can we spend 10, 15 minutes on that now? Because I have a different
Oh,
perspective.
I'd really appreciate that since I missed last Monday. So it'll be really, really good.
Okay, cool. So one of the things I've done badly in these meetings, amongst many things, is not contextualizing something when I present it. Because for some reason, even though we have a lot of time, I'm really worried about wasting your time. And if I don't contextualizing, I'm actually wasting your time more. So I apologize. So what I'm going to show you now is a brief bit of theory that is not in any way new. It's just a visual way that I see it. And then I'll show you how I'm dealing with it in Author because it's implemented. And then the question is, how can this be done in a much richer way in XR? Because even the way in Author is questionable, right? So there's also too much contextualization. So let me just do this. If you can't see the screen, just tell me. You can, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the thing is, none of this is going to be, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it is all context. So two people walking down the street, one's a dancer, one's a banker, you would expect them to have different background thoughts. All of us have different general thoughts. And you could look at that in the sense of velocities of potentials for cognitive options in our brains. So one of the things that really worries me is that the human brain has all these superhighways. I think there's 7, 8 of them, something like that, of things that are really well wired. That means there are things that are not really well wired. Plus, there is things in the brain we don't know yet. So if you look at the 2 dots on the left as being previous thoughts, and they're now hitting our current thoughts, potentially it could go into a myriad, almost infinite amount of thoughts, but it won't do that. There'll be very, very few, which is why we keep thinking the same groove again and again, right? I think this is extremely dangerous. And this is not new. This is discussed millions of times. So what I have implemented in Author, I'm going to open up. Whose paper should I open up? Quick, choose one, please, somebody.
One of mine.
Okay, we'll do gray space. I'm just going to make the column a bit smaller and the text a bit bigger. 1 second. No, I'll leave the text. Right, so here is the thing. So let's pretend I'm Peter and I haven't written the stuff below. I've written this and I'm a bit stuck, right? I know what comes next, but I don't know. So all I do is control click and the top command now is called Spark. That is just a pre-written prompt plus that selected text goes to ChatGPT. All it is supposed to do is help the user think in different ways, right? Can you read this on your screen? Okay.
It's small, but I can make it out. It's small, really small.
Okay, sorry. That's a big screen. I'm just going to make it a bit bigger so there's no scrolling. Here you go. But tell me when you had a good enough skim.
So for the once we get there, then what happens?
Once you get this, that's it. This, I don't like anything in Author that does the work for you, because then you're not authoring. I don't want to offload to AI. Purely an inspiration thing. So thank you for that question, Dene. That's Mark has been really kind over the weekend to go through this with me and really highlighting how little context I've shared. So that was a similar question he asked. So I'll just explain what this is and what's behind it. These ones, I'll show you the prompt in a second because that's really important for context. So these ones are 5 different thoughts. Like Marshall McLuhan had these cards, inspiration cards, right? I've also asked it to do the media tetrad by McLuhan, and it's kind of shocking how good it tends to be for that. So that's good. And then a very different one is perspective from randomly chosen different professions. Here's a historian, graphic designer, software developer, and a poet. None of this needs to make sense. It is just meant to jostle so that when you go back to those dots in your head, you have different dots. That's all it is. And then there's some keywords down here. So that is it. But I'm going to now show you the prompts.
Can we read what Peter, can we read Peter's little paragraph so we can see what we're starting with?
Of course. Yeah, but
Peter,
in a sense, oh, here it is.
so preliminary, Peter, will you read this for us?
Okay, preliminary experimentation with the current generation of OCR tech suggests that most systems are optimized for contiguous blocks of text in simple 1 or 2 column layouts, making limited use of punctuation characters following normal linguistic customs. As a result, leading white space and paired delimiters, for example, nested brackets and braces, will have a high probability of being mangled, necessitating heavy post-OCR editing or an outright manual retyping in the first instance.
Peter, I think that's good because that really encapsulates the whole bit. And I'm just going to show you the prompt because that's really kind of important. So we can just go here, edit. And you see here's a separate one. I'm going to copy that text into a new window. This is the prompt as it is now. And the idea is that when we have those 5 professions, right? Here it's asking, I've asked it to choose them at random, but I could imagine it may be more useful for a specific user to edit this prompt. As you can see, any user can. So they may say, you know, I'm a computer scientist. This is my background. Make sure you don't talk about computer science, etc. But how poverty-stricken was the result? It's a column of gray text. Could we use this kind of thinking in XR so that instead of talking about these professions, we have chosen professions that appear in the space and can offer their opinions, maybe?
Question, what are we authoring? if year two is authoring, what is the argument for authoring here? I see the value of this. Put it in perspective of our year two. How does that apply?
For me to answer that, I would say this bit is just to help you jiggle and have other options to think about. That's it. In terms of what I believe we are working on authoring for year two, it is this volume thing, meaning bits of text hypertextually connected spatially. So I could imagine that, first of all, I'm not saying it has to be AI doing this. It can be different processes. And it doesn't have to be one for something like this. It can be many. I can't imagine going into space, doing some authoring, and then pulling in different types of perspectives in the room we are in to help shape the volume we are building. And then when we share this with others as a published work, those other things may or may not be included for context for the reader. Does anyone, kind of in closing, have any prompt they would like to try on any of the papers just to see how it works?
Yeah, we can try one on mine. Mario Shania, do you have ours in there yet? Actually, yeah, didn't know mine. I have
Yes.
two.
No, I'd love to.
In hypertext.
I've tried yours several times. That's why I didn't automatically pick it now. Absolutely, we'll do that. But let's edit the prompt first to be more appropriate to someone writing hypertext. Do you have a sentence or a question we should put in the prompt?
So let me rephrase what I was trying to ask. Are we in the hypertext papers or the papers for the future text?
Future text.
Okay. I didn't do hypertext. I actually did something else. So for that one, I did, I talked about the problem with, there's this idea that we've got to, when you submit, like when you and I did the Sloan grant, I had to submit a sustainability statement that was 2 pages long. Like, how are we going to keep this alive for 2 years? And I find that to be weird because the book I just published a year ago, right, that can be out of print in a year, but there's no sustainability statement for a print book. So the way in which we treat digital objects is that they've got to last forever. And yet print books die too. So the question I asked ChatGPT when I was working on my project was what is the amount of print, what is the percentage of print books that fall out of print within 2 years? Because if you know anything about academic publishing, your books become pulped after a couple of years. They just take the books, whatever's left over, and they just throw it back into the pulp, and they use that pulp for another set of books. And it's really depressing to think that all that intellectual property is being pulped. So there's no sustainability, really, for academic books. So what is the percentage of academic books that are sustained over 2 years? And the question I got was, we're losing like a third. It's like
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
So this prompt behaves a little different. So the way this works is this prompt that is hidden in the system is sent to ChatGPT in front of the text you select from your article. So that is the different way it's done here. So this is not a straight question to ChatGPT. So I've added a sentence here that you may want to have for all your prompt. I am an academic concerned with teaching and archiving born digital work.
Okay.
So that's talking about you. So do you guys have any, just for one single test, I'm not going to turn this into an AI session or anything like that. Do you have any further thing you would like to see from Dene's first few paragraphs? How about this, Dene? Are there any prominent women who have worked on this? Should I add that?
Oh, that doesn't even come into contact with anything that I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about gender in this thing. It's just a general kvetch about the way in which we treat digital objects as if they're different, like worse than print.
I'm going to put this at the end because I am asking it to come up with something off the wall.
Okay.
And Okay, so what I do now, I copy this, copy, go to settings, go to Spark,
I don't want
delete
to-
everything, paste in the new one. And then we open Dene's article. And because this is not supposed to analyze other people's articles. So I'm going to pretend Dene got kind of stuck here. That's the point. It's to spark writing, pretend she has
That's a different article. That's the other article. Sorry. That
Okay,
has nothing I was talking about earlier.
right,
I
sorry.
wrote two. It's all right. I gave you two.
So Spark, and here we go. I'm hoping you're kind of annoyed by this, whether you agree with the AI or not, and thinking about how much richer this can be rather than a list.
Can you make the words bigger? Can you do a command
I can.
plus?
What I'll do is do this.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
All right, it's almost, yeah.
Okay, so we're back at the beach ball. Okay, that's a different article. That's nothing with what I was talking about.
Okay.
Okay, beach balls, synthetic merges, sensory spectrum, quantum entanglement of text, tipper collage. Okay, all right. Okay.
I really like the tetrad, and I find that's so useful. What do you guys think?
Trees, oral traditions, and communal storytelling. Yeah. And this might be handy for me as I'm working. Today I'm meeting with the TEDx talk people.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I turned in my outline for my talk. And so I'm meeting with them about my outline so I can start building the actual script. And this might be interesting to do with my outline. Like, where can I go from here?
So one thing Mark didn't quite get in terms of what I'm doing with this is what's unique. And the only thing that is unique here is you pre-write a prompt, it's applied to selected text, and that's it. That otherwise you would have to type it all into. But look at this one, Dene. Otherwise you'd have to type the whole thing in. So it's good to see the names in there properly attributed, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see Nancy Kaplan. There was the five people that were like the big hypertext theorists of the period. Nancy was dating Stewart, but she was part of that TENAC group. They were called TENAC. Joyce, Moulthrop, Kaplan, McDade.
So if we all look here for a moment on, because I've tried to find systems for analysis. I've found Edward de Bono has done a little bit, but for the tetrad, if we look at it together, especially you, Fabian, considering your kind of room thing that you have now, could you imagine asking a question and having these four things spatially, but also presented better? So you always know that obsolescence will be behind you, reverses to the right, enhances in front, and obsolescence to the left, maybe, and presented in more colorful ways. Might that be inspirational or not?
Like having feedback that is positioned in space, yes, like any kind of familiarity with it. I would always though have the question of the source of it. Like, does it have to be AI, or can it be feedback that's provided from people from the group or anything else?
I think
be...
I think you misunderstand my intention. Obviously, I understand the reality, but my intention of this is it's nothing more than what we used to do, some of us in the olden days, go into a really good bookshop or magazine shop, look at a magazine, skip through, and then get inspired a little bit differently. So I don't think the sources matter because it's not intended to be a copy and paste. So if you read, for instance, retrieves oral traditions and communal storytelling, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Then you close it and you get on with your work. It's not at all intended to be a work product. It's purely a provocation. So that's why, you know, even almost something random, if it stirs your imagination, might be useful. I have found a limitation that testing these over the weekend, they tend to like quantum entanglement and fashion, which is neat. But if they are too similar, these ones, hi Carl, then we get to the point of they're not really that inspirational. So that's why experimenting individually with the prompts is kind of cool.
But can you talk to us about how you envision us using this next year for the project?
Yeah, as I see in the sidebar now that I'm not sharing, brainstorming aid. Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I see it. I don't at all see us directly using this. I just find because I own author, I can do whatever the heck I want. So it's a good way to prototype some things. And I do consider this a prototype, is in the XR environment. Now that we are beginning to experiment with AR, meaning we can get up and go in a normal room, the different walls can have different attributes and they can change, which is insane. So, of course, we have the project walls around us, but also I could so imagine reading, no, let's say authoring, excuse me. You're writing something, you get stuck, you click a button or whatever it is, and then the walls in the room, not just this, but like whatever thing we think of saying, here is something, this is the opposite of what you're talking about, right? This is what people have said before. These are references. Over here we have inspiration. Yeah, Dene.
Rather than walls, because that takes us back to the Euclidean world, can we think of surfaces?
Yeah.
And surfaces allows us to move through, right? I mean, a surface is just, it can be a temporary state, whereas a wall is almost like a prison, right? And we're stuck inside. And then, I mean, and I'm saying this because in the motion tracking lab that I had for all those years, we had all the experiences happening on the wall. So it's like a holodeck, right? So you're confined to a space. And so what was driving me crazy about that was the confinement. And I wanted to break out, which is what VR allowed me to do. And the thing I didn't like about VR at the time was the chords and the rigs. Remember the early rigs, right? And then the chords. Now we're cordless to a certain extent. Of course, we still have to put the battery in our pocket with the Apple Vision Pro, but be that as it may, we don't have that long cord that we can trip over and die, kill ourselves and die. So I have more space. I can move beyond my natural world. So surface is kind of a neat word because it gives us the definition of media, our media. And so it's a just kind of place to put to show to like broadcast.
Yeah, hang on. I'm just repairing the prompt that I mangled in our experiment. Yeah, I think it's very, very important what you're saying, Dini, because I've had a few friends try on the Vision Pro this weekend, and it's always interesting for people who haven't used any of this yet. The notion on the Vision, you twist and you go into a virtual environment and a normal environment is quite powerful. So I can absolutely say that the notion of spaces and surfaces is more important than just walls, yes. Because, like coming back from Fabien's, and, every time I come back, I put on the headset and I watch a movie and I do a few small things. To have one layout in your VR environment that could be, could be a valley, it could be a mountaintop, right? If it inspires you, if you're writing a fantasy novel, why not make it a fantasy landscape that gives you this? If you're doing science experiments or whatever, why not make it a science environment? Fabian's notion of having layouts as separate things comes into that perfectly.
Any other feedback from folks?
I'm seeing things on the side here. Carl, you've written a lot. Do you mind speaking it, please?
Oh yeah, I just didn't want to interrupt. So I'll read this off. UX in XR is like particularly bad in regards to apps like not doing enough. So needing to Google something while in an XR app is maddening. Especially because browsers on XR headsets are for the most part really, really awful. Having something like AI or a search engine like within reach within an authoring application would prevent you having to basically tab out or open a different app to get an answer to a question or to look something up like a synonym or a name or a date. I know using AI for semantic information like that, if it's particularly niche, is a good way to get a hallucination back. But for simpler things that are more common knowledge that you're just having retrieval blocking issues on, having access to something like that quickly within the scope of your existing application will help prevent these sort of attention fracturing workflows where you're constantly jumping back and forth between different things.
I think that's very important, Carl, and it's the opposite of what I was talking about, meaning it's equally important because it should be really clear in the environment when you want to know a thing, a fact, and when you just want to break out of your kind of mental ruts and just be inspired. And that those two should not be conflated too much, right? And of course, doing proper research, like some people complain about the citations being bad. That is really important. That is yet another category. Fabian.
So the last time we had the discussion, also I suggested the stepping out physically, like for example, going to the cafe or shower or whatnot. So I still think that could also be done there, namely that you have your normal working space, even if you're in AR, like your office, and you might want to be under a waterfall or on the moon or whatever. Or if you're in VR, you might also be in a different space. So I think that regardless of what's generated or how it's done, if there is a real basis that doing things spatially and having us moving our bodies to move knowledge really helps. And I think this kind of questions of, how can we're stuck in a situation somehow, we try to explore everything, we need to step back. I think that should also be explored through the reshaping of the environment, either a list of environments that the person is not used to, can be 360 photos, can also be 3D models assembled randomly. I don't really know, but I think it should not be just words, and thus the environment could also be partly reshaped around those or with potentially those words.
Oh, I'm going to have to jump on that because I agree with everything, but I'll take it a little further. I like to go to a specific coffee shop in London, even though I'm a member of the Grouchy and all kinds of fancy things. I like a specific Nero. It's kind of dingy, but it's like a tunnel in a way. And when I sit down and concentrate, there's a lot of peripheral motion, and that seems to activate concentration in me. It's like ADHD. I'm seeing what you're typing here, Carl. Like all my impulses for wasting time are subdued because our peripheral vision and our central vision do different things, of course, almost like playing with Legos in a meeting. So first of all, I agree it shouldn't all be text. Our primary authoring will be text-based. I also think that it shouldn't, it would be nice if I can virtually go to that Nero in my headset, maybe, or all the things you talked about. But in addition to these being a mountain or a room or whatever, they could also, of course, be informationally rich, right? So depending on what you're working on, the sky may change colors based on factors. Maybe if you're writing a story, that's where you are. The building in the distance, if you're writing too much evil, it becomes red. It's like all kinds of nonsense just to help other thing give you more options for where to go, right? So yeah, the figure and ground becomes important. The background is also important.
I think some of that's going to depend on interpretation.
Very much.
And because, and also sometimes, I think about when you're weighing out your choices, right? You're at a crossroads in your life. You can go this way or this way or this way. And I think it's important to be able to I think it's imperative to look forward and say, here's the possibilities of what can happen if I go this direction. If this is plan B, here's how this can unfold. Plan C. And I can tell you that in my life, I've never gone without at least 3 to 4 plans. And I've mapped out each possible iteration, right? if we color code or even have these kind of inventions that help us, I don't know, tell us what we're doing is dark or negative, it might preclude us from having that kind of creative discussion with ourselves. If I do X, here's what could happen, right? We want that feedback. And maybe we don't want it to be seen as negative, but as a possibility that is something we don't want to happen. It's not necessarily negative. It's just different than what we want. And so I think there's some things that what I'm worried about with AI, and maybe some other people are too, is that it becomes canned. I mean, the reason why we're doing this project with XR is because we don't want companies telling us what we're going to see in a headset, because the headset is the future, right? So what can we do to mitigate that, to kind of free us from that possibility? And I would say that we're right now having discussion about AI, and already we've lost that war. That whole thing is run amok, and we're not going to be able to stop it. We're not going to be able to stop it. All we can do is to find a way to make it work for us and not be, I'd say, tainted by the corporate activities that are happening around AI right now. It's limiting us in a really negative way. And it doesn't have to. I'm not anti-AI. I just don't like what companies are telling me and how they're handling the material in AI. Yeah, Frode?
Agree so much. And I think there is a divine, so to speak, reason AI and VR are happening at the same time. I think we need to use the VR, AR, XR, whatever, to help us deal with the AI to make it more useful, because yes, it is corporate, it is lots of bad stuff. Now, you don't want to necessarily be told this is a bad thing. That is so important. Like in my ACM paper where I talked about, I don't like the term accessibility because it's pejorative. Everybody has a preference, visually or otherwise. So with XR, we're getting to the point where we can really not just mitigate, we can really augment. So if Dene really needs certain colors or spaces in her room, she should have it. If Andrew is the opposite, he should have that. It just shouldn't be an argument anymore. And I think that's very exciting for this kind of environment design we're talking about now. One of the things I spent the most time over the weekend when I was just pottering about with Author was color combinations. One of the key things is when you're in a focus mode, as you know from any other software, normal text with your cursor, text that doesn't have the cursor is really faded out. So if you are in light mode or dark mode, if it's warm or cool, there are different relations between how faded the other text is. I think that's really, really important. And I think it's really important the user can choose from a curated set of researched themes. And it should be the same here. Maybe you want to go in an environment for aggressively being told what to think because you're writing a very commercial story. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you want something entirely sitting on the moon, like Fabian said. But to have these options is a phenomenal thing. And how we manage that and how we introduce people to the basics of it will be important, I think.
I want to mention that when I talk about accessibility, there's 5 types of accessibility. One is the human accessibility to an object, right? But I'm also talking about just being able to get your hands on something. Just the basic, can I get this? And so in talking about the headsets, so many people, headsets aren't accessible to them, not because they're physically unable to do it, because they don't have the money. It's an affordability issue for them. Or it's, in some cases, it's nervousness. Like as you might remember, Andrew, at that demonstration we gave in, I don't know, was it back in October, early November? And people were walking out going, oh no, I want to put the headset on. Oh no, I'm not gonna put that on my head. They don't want to access things. And so it's a choice. And so accessibility for me is 5 different things when I talk about it. So it's a much broader concept.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. That is really, really important. I was thinking about it in the very narrow sense. So that is very
That's
important.
definitely an important one, but it's one of 5. And the lab tries to focus on all 5 of them. So we just want people to read our stuff.
What do you think of the name Spark, by the way, guys?
It's good.
It's better, right?
Yeah. Was that your idea? Was that
Well, Mark has been very kind because when Mark doesn't get what I'm doing, he's very honest about it. So we had lots of texts back and forth, and he really didn't like the term expand. He said it feels more like you have something you expand, like fold and expand. So I then did a Chat GPT, a Claude, and a Google Gemini. And I think it's actually Chat GPT, that's it, something Spark, maybe Mind Spark. They, did all these composite word, but then, yeah, Spark makes sense.
yeah.
Just spark your curiosity kind of thing.
Let's call our AI Sparky.
That's not bad.
Why not? It's cute.
That's not bad at all. Okay. Yeah, this is useful and cool.
And Frode, that presentation was much better because when we make presentations, sometimes, I mean, what we know, it goes back to what we know in our head, right? We know what we're trying to do, and we show somebody, and we just go, "Look," and they don't say anything. It's like, "What? Tell me something about this." And they're not able to read. If we could do the Vulcan mind lock through Zoom, we could get more information, but we don't. So much of what we do has to be contextualized. It's like, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what this is for. Here's how this will work. Now, let me show it to you. Give me your feedback. And just folks, when I was telling Frode the other day in academe, so the rest of you aren't in academe at all. In academe, the first response to anything in an academic conference, truly academic conference, is, have you thought about, what about this? Or did you read this? Or how about this? We never go, oh, that's so wonderful. You're so brilliant. We never do that. The first thing we do is to start picking holes at things because that's the skepticism in academe, right? And it becomes very off-putting if you're not academic. It's like, what? Why are you saying these things? What do you mean if I didn't read this? And it's not meant to be negative. It's like, that's how I engage. That's how we engage with each other. And when I make a presentation at a conference, I line up all my ducks and I go, here's this question they might ask. Here's this question they might ask. And I want to have ready answered. Okay, yes, I read that. No, I haven't read that. Great idea. I'll write that down, right? So what are my responses to these about 10 questions I might be hit with? So I go to a conference prepared for the negative, or I would say critical things that people might say to me. And my response is, that's a very good question. Let me think about that. Right? I hadn't thought about that. One of my favorite responses was by Michael Punt, who's a professor at the University of Plymouth, who I studied with in my postdoc. His response to any question was, that's not a very interesting question. A more interesting question would be, and then he would then start to ask his own questions. And it would just crack everybody up. But he could get away with it because he was 70 years old and he was a Don. An English John. But so just to be able to contextualize our material and be prepared for comments is such an important thing. And Carl, you were ready in your presentation beautifully.
I mean, to be fair, I had practiced that presentation because I gave it earlier that same week for my algorithms class. It was leaning more heavily on the data tree structure for like time and space optimization, which was the focus of that class in the paper, but I just changed a few slides and the overall idea is the same.
Yeah, I mean, my students were absolutely impressed. They were like, that presentation was fantastic. It was practiced. You were ready for every question we threw at you. I mean, it was the classic perfect presentation. So whoever is your dissertation chair is well prepared you. So, yeah, so Fabian, that was on point. The trick to presentation is to be absolutely ready for that presentation and know what, and this goes to even interviews. Carl, when you're being interviewed for your first job, you want to make a list of 10 questions that the interviewer is going to ask you, and then you want to answer those questions and have a ready answer. And that way you're not grasping for straws. And even if it's something like Marvel or DC, which is the one they tend to ask here as a joke
Really?
question, like Spider-Man or Batman, and why?
The Mandalorian.
I say the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah, he's good. So this person that is your dissertation chair, he's amazing.
I really got most of my presentation experience when I was working at the core because we had all groups of different kinds of people come into the lab to do tours of the facility. And I had to explain the VR simulation projects we were working on from anyone from college students, middle school students, to senators, generals, green suiters, district workers, academics. So, like, the content of what we're doing stays the same, but those different demographics care very much about very different things, and you have to highlight those and sort of like lessen the other ones that they don't want to hear about. Because like the administrators and the like future planning people, they really don't want to hear about the specific technical aspects of how something was implemented or how it was coded. They don't care. And on the flip side, the academics and the researchers really don't care about where the tech is going to be, where it's at today. They're interested and the current flaws or whatever. The green suiters care about what it can do today out of the box, and the academics care where the research is going over the next 5 years. And so it's the same content, but the perspective and the priorities of those different demographics are very, very different. And so I got a lot of practice over those 3 years that I worked there, literally just on the spot. Jonathan would come in and tell me one morning, "We got people coming this morning." I wasn't in charge of the schedule. I didn't know that. I'm just like, "Who's coming?" And he starts listing off names and titles. And I'm like, I did what, like, who's kind of demographic, like green suitor, academic, like what am I tailoring my presentation to? What jargon am I removing or adding back in? And sometimes I had like 5 minutes heads up. So I just had to learn that skill, just sort of trial by fire, just sort of go through it.
Andrew's gone through the same thing in the lab. So we've had so many tours of the lab, and we rehearse. We rehearse for different demographics. And so the most recent one was the folks from the ones that we're going to be talking, that are going to be working with us on building the foundation, right? The center that we're building. And we had a group of them coming in, and we were like a dog and pony show, ready to. We had how many minutes for the whole thing, Andrew? Like 5 minutes, 7 minutes.
Yeah, it was like somewhere around 7, I think. But we had like
Yeah.
6 of us who had to talk, so
Yeah, so we had to get it down to a minute, like a elevator speech. But each one of us presented, and we were finished, one guy from who runs the communications for the entire system stayed after and talked about how fabulous the presentation was, and that's because we rehearsed so darn much, and we knew who we were talking to. So your audience is so important, knowing how to tailor your discussion to an audience and be able to reach that audience. So yeah, so for this is really good to contextualize. Yeah.
It's kind of funny because you know how they say that, hang on, I just changed the prompt here for you guys. How they say that cousins or people closest argue the most. Hi, Randall. I think that actually considering you guys as an audience is the hardest because we have so much overlap in understanding, but not all of it. So it's really hard to not be patronizing or to miss something out. To get the right balance, because we're close intellectually, it's harder, but equally, if not more, important.
I think one of the things I like to say is that whenever I do a presentation, what I'm really looking for is how to strengthen my work. I really want to know, am I on the right track? Did I forget to read something? Is there something that I haven't done yet? I don't want to waste my time. And so when I have a room full of really smart people with a lot of different interests, but understand what I'm doing, it's so valuable to have that feedback. And even if I don't like to hear some things that are being said, my response is thank you for that. Thank you for telling me that. And I can choose to not do it or to do it. And so it has to be my project, right? But the feedback is so necessary because the point of what we're doing is to better the world. And the world doesn't start and end with me. The world is everybody. So what does everybody think about this? And just get that feedback is helpful. Hey, Brandel.
I've just changed some things. If you guys keep talking, then if you don't mind, I'll repeat the basics of this to Brandel for a fresh perspective, if that's okay. Let me just clean it up here.
And while you're doing that, Brandel and Carl, we were talking earlier, year 2 starts January 6th officially, kickoff. And so our meeting is going to be about, getting us ready for the rest of the year. And we have already updated the schedule so that we have Fabian talking the next Monday on non-Euclidean, or Fabian and I are going to be talking about non-Euclidean and how it might fit with XR. And then the next week is Bob Harn. And we have a link to his book that's available for free at the Internet Archive still. And then we're still working on the final presentation, the final month. And then the other thing is that on Mondays, we'll start at 8:30 in the morning. Frode and I need 30 minutes to get ready. And I can't get up any earlier than 5:30 in the morning to get ready for this. And I have to go straight to school from here. So we're going to meet at 8 o'clock to 8:30, and then we'll start Future of Text at 8:30. Does that make sense? And then Wednesday meetings will be for development only. We're not going to do any other discussion, and it'll be primarily Frode, Fabian, and me. And then when we need extra eyes and ears and heads and brains, we'll invite people into that meeting. Because we really want to move on this year 2 fast.
So I
You ready
think, oh, sorry, what?
Are you ready?
Yeah, I think I messed up everything, but yeah, I'm ready enough. So, Brandel, this is kind of what I presented last week, which was a bit bungled. The beginning bit, I'm sure you're extremely familiar with, but it's the whole notion that our thoughts tend to go from one thought to the next based on our prior knowledge, context, and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of potential thoughts that we don't have in front of us mentally. So I've just built this little prompt into Author that allows you to select text, and then on top of the context menu there is Spark. So you hit that, and then you wait because ChatGPT is a bit slow right now, and it gives you these types of things. Now, right now, I'll show you the prompt separately. This is the current prompts. I messed it up a little bit in terms of the formatting, but it first says a little bit about who I am, and the user can edit these prompts at any time here. So you could say, for instance, I don't want to hear anything about Apple products or whatever it is, just so it understands you better. And then it asks for keywords, which are now listed on top with that little bar. And I asked it to do McLuhan's media tetrad, which it usually does really well, but for some reason now, each one of these aspects has got all the 4 things underneath it, which is different. And then finally, it goes into a list of almost random things like theater mouse. How might hidden interfaces transform the way we interact with technology? And then the last bit is 5 randomly selected professions. How might they view? So what we looked at was the beginning of Ken's paper, which is about the hand-computer interfaces. So none of this is intended to be copy-paste into your work. It's just intended to be helping you. Like, why would I consider what a psychologist would care, or a poet, right? You read that, maybe you get inspired. And of course, I'm very excited to test this in my own little Author. But what we've been talking about today is how much more interesting it can be in a spatialized environment, where I initially suggested putting different things on different walls, like the tetrad, and Dene suggested surfaces instead of walls. And then we'll continue the discussion into Fabian's notions of saving spaces separate, or layouts separate. So anyway, that's where that was. All kinds of fun with the AIs.
Cool.
So Brandel,
I
you're a very brain-focused person. So do you have any specific suggestions or thoughts on how in XR or whatever, when someone is authoring, their brains can be a bit jostled to provide different inspirations?
so I don't read phenomenally well. And so my capacity to distinguish things visually based on the textual content is not as good. And so something that I like to do is draw textually things apart from one another in order to be able to hold the difference between the things more sort of clearly in my sort of spatial, situational, whatever you want to call it, kind of perception. And so if there are different kinds of things that are doing different jobs, having them have the ability to keep that visual appearance distinct is really great. So that can be things being on different color backgrounds or in different boxes or having different typefaces or using different scales. And one of the things that in XR, especially that I've been a really strong proponent of is to use wildly different type scales, font sizes that allow you to be able to ascertain this is this kind of thing. Um, and in the same way that the title of a gallery space is going to be not 3 times larger than the smallest text in the gallery, but maybe 100 times larger. You might have 5-point text next to a painting, and the actual name of the exhibit will be something on the order of 500-point text as you enter the gallery room. So depending on how people are sort of locomoting through a space, being able to leverage those areas of visual distinction. I think those are neat. But I like the idea of the prompts. If there are ways of making it clear, like if you think about, you played SimCity 2000 and other games like that, the way that they just put a person's face next to the different advisors, and so the transport advisor was there, and the police advisor, and other people like that, and just sort of characterizing them as speech from a specific sort of attributable person enriched the experience far more than if they hadn't sort of saved the kilobytes for having those little headshots. And also, it actually had a couple of different photos of them. So if they were extremely angry, then you would get a different shot of them than if they were sort of presenting neutrally. And so if there's statefulness that can be kind of encoded within those zones as well, then that's, I think, very valuable. But yeah, hopefully that's useful.
That's very useful. I do share the whole reading thing. It can be a challenge for me. I'm also one of those people who like to spatialize things. And as you know, Bob Horn is a big person on this. Dene has invited Bob to do a presentation on the 20th, right, Dene? Yeah. So on our schedule and Future Text Lab website, we now are beginning to fill in presentations and themed discussions. Themed discussions now are going to be led by someone. So for instance, the non-Euclidean space will be introduced by Dene and Fabian, 15-minute introduction. We may provide some reading material for those who want to before, and then during the session, it is moderated by Dene. So if you have someone you'd like to invite or a theme, please do share.
And I do want to designate March as Women's History Month. It might be a way to get some women in here because we're short on that, area. And so, and Fabian, probably be really good if you and I could chat about what we were going to talk about on that day. Because I think what I'd like to do is focus on the art, non-Euclidean representation in art. And that might be a really interesting ways of thinking about it, seeing what people have already envisioned, and then talk about how it can happen. That makes sense?
Yes, it does. And yeah, it means I'll have to prepare the preparation, but I have a little list of like games and things and the principle behind it. And so enough for preparing the 15-minute intro. So happy to do that. We'll just have to decide when to chat about it.
Just pasting down some of this.
Talking about memory, I have an eidetic memory, which has been dangerous. Hard for a marriage.
I have basically no memory. So
I
I
made
think
a
we
lot of money.
balance each other out in so many ways, Dini, and that's one of them.
I made a lot of money as a waitress when I was waiting tables. Somebody would come in one time, and I would remember their drink the next time.
Wow.
And have it on the table waiting for them when they sat down. It was great. I made a lot of money back then. Put myself through graduate school.
You could be a
But I think I
dangerous
mentioned
gambler too.
I guess I don't know. I never was into that, but but it made it dissertation easy, Carl, because I'd have my pile of books around the floor, but I never had to pick them up. I knew exactly what page things were on. It's like, oh, page 20.
I'm
Went a
looking.
lot faster.
I'm looking at the comments here from Carl and also what Brendel said. So our work has to be for academic users because that's what we have the agreement with Sloan. Academic users like gray columns of text, officially anyway. That's how the journals are. But of course, we're now graduating to spatial authoring. So I really think it was very good that we got to this point of the end of today, talking about the importance of giving the author a much richer, even if it's all text, like Carl says, the blue thing over there on the left or something. And, to give an author the opportunity to do anything they like is fair enough. But to do it in a way that is contextualized so that the reader can choose to change everything based on their preferences gets really interesting, right? So
Going back to memory stuff, I think part of and concentration, I think part of it is focus. And I would say just based on watching my students these years, they don't focus anymore on one thing. Their focus is all over the place. And even right now, I'm betting that some people are online tweaking things or looking at their mail or maybe doing something else. We're not all looking at each other and listening to each other. And when that happens, it takes your concentration away. And it means you're not listening, you're not paying attention. And I think about Pauline, what was her last name, who did deep listening? Paula, ooh, she was up at Rensselaer. Anybody remember her? Paula that did deep listening, very famous process back in the 90s. And how we don't do that anymore. We don't listen deeply. We don't read deeply. We don't think deeply.
Pauline Oliveros.
Oliveros, thank you for that. Yeah, she was brilliant. I met her one time at a conference.
So that's super important, Dini, because where we put our attention is, of course, really, really important. And most of the time, we have to be careful with deep listening. It always has to be critical deep listening anyway, right? And when you choose to go deep and when you choose, well, because it's one of the things I understand about reading the Talmud, the Torah, rather, the Jewish book. I don't know that much about Judaism, but I remember from our friend Doug Rushkoff writing about it, saying that you're not allowed to read it alone. It has to be other people in the room. You're not allowed to read for longer than a certain period of time because you shouldn't be wrapped up and focused in the story too much. It should be analytical. Phenomenally interesting. So, where you put your deep reading is a really important thing. We shouldn't have it all the time, but when it's important, should absolutely provide an environment for that. In addition to just skimming. So that's really.
And to respond to Carl, one of the things I learned as a child, because I'm hyperactive, right? And in those days they didn't have medication for that, thank God. But what the doctor recommended my mother was just to wear me out in the morning, make sure I was out getting lots of physical activity. And so I literally would run at 6:35 in the morning, 3 days a week, just to keep myself down. And worked out in the mornings, try to get a lot of exercise, and then that calms me down. Coffee also helped. So a lot of the ADHD problems my students are having when I talk to them, they don't get any exercise at all. Right? They're just sitting. reading on their phones or reading their books, getting ready for class. They're not getting outside. They're not getting that exercise. So I think some of the stuff that's happening with ADHD is also connected to how much physical activity they're getting. Because I would literally become a much calmer person by noon.
That is so important, Dene. I have two comments on that. One is at Edgar School in the morning, they all do little exercises. It's partly for group cohesion. It really works. If you move together, you are more likely to empathize with the people around you. Also, thank God we live at the bottom of a hill. He has 15 minutes cycling straight up a hill every morning, so he's always pumped when he comes in. And also, there's been so many studies on uh, muscle memory. In the helicopter, you have the collective and the cyclic, right? You can move that into a button, you do that, and then people will forget they did something. So I'm also extremely happy for that to come up today, because the authorship we're talking about, we should really stretch ourselves to author room scale rather than just, if we can get someone to walk over to check a reference, wouldn't that maybe be better than if they just sit and they just do this and the reference comes to them?
Well,
Maybe.
that's something that's interesting you're saying that, because one of the things we're doing in the motion tracking lab was kinesthetic learning. We're experimenting with kinesthetic learning, making people move and touch and find information in the space, right? And that we had a project called EyeSight that was funded that we did that activity or did that study on. And so there's so much done in kinesthetic learning now, but at the time, I mean, the thought that kids had to move in order to learn was like, what? Well, I'm sitting still in a row, looking at their teacher. And that doesn't always work. Thank you, Fabian.
Well, it seems it's very similar to the sort of the dawning realization that took a woman also about the default mode network. The fact that a still body is not the same as a still mind, and that there are things that kind of run amok when people are trying to sort of stay anchored, not what's actually happening on the interior. Um, the other thing I wanted to say was that uh, there are very different things that happen when you also travel at different speeds. The idea of walking around, moving your own body through spaces is very different to traveling in a powered vehicle and things like that. So having the ability to kind of um, make those transitions and walk across spaces is really, really interesting.
My
Well,
mother,
that speaks to the Platonic, I mean the Aristotelian school, right? Walking and learning. And then also Wittgenstein used to go on a 5-mile walk every morning. And then he'd come back and work on his philosophy, right? And as far as I go, I've been running since I was 19, so we're coming up on 50 years, more than 50 years. And that's 3 to 5 times a week, 3 miles. And what that does for me is I'm able I run slowly, so I'm not a fast runner, but I'm able to focus in on something. And by the time I'm through with my 3 miles, I've kind of gnarled on that problem and have kind of come to some sort of idea of how to move forward on it.
yeah.
Peripatetic
So,
is what the word I'm thinking of. Peripatetic learning.
yes. So this is super important. Let's not lose it. Do we know someone who may present on this? Kinesthetic learning?
I don't know anybody now working on it. The people I was working with are long gone. That's been over 10 years now. But we can look for someone.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really good.
I mean, I think I don't know how much she's doing at the moment, but I would argue that it's Tversky's central thesis, Barbara Tversky. There are other folks down in University of UC San Diego who have a similar sort of kinds of thoughts, but I don't know the specific people who are doing it. That guy's name. No, I don't have it. But yeah, like UCSD has it. Anybody who like, it's likely that if you have any, like Tversky will know people as well if there are some of her students and or anybody who's sort of carried on that torch there. Student Golden Meadow, but she's also getting on. Like, yeah, she does hands rather than perambulation.
Should I invite her? What do you think, Dene?
Well, she's spoken to us before about it. Uh, she when she was doing book toury stuff for Mind in Motion. Uh, it's pretty good. I don't know whether Annie Murphy Paul has continued looking at all of these things, but you know, her book, The Extended Mind, covered some of the other thinkers in the space as well. I haven't gone through again to see which ones that she wise animals. Oh yeah, Chatfield.
It's quite good. It refers to a lot of people in our community. But Dini, what do you think? Shall I ask Barbara if she wants to join us, maybe in
Yeah,
February?
that sounds great. Yeah.
Okay. Boom. She is a very active member of the community. She replies to most emails, so that's really, really lovely.
I need to get on to my lab meeting today, and I'm going to be in that lab most of the week, so I need to go now.
Okay, well, I'm very happy. It's really nice how we're shaping up the dialogue sessions. So this is all very good. So see you guys on Wednesday.
Yeah, I was going to mention, Bobby, I was going to mention to you, I heard back from Allison, and so she's working on your contract, so that's moving forward today. You should be hearing from her. It should be pretty wrapped up. And then also for your headset, if you can do your homework and tell us what you want, like what's your eye, you have to do your Vision Pro. Give us your
I
spec.
learned that a few days ago, so I have the link. I can share it to you directly or her, whatever is more convenient. Because indeed, I expected like, oh, it's not ready. Oh, it's ready. It has to be done in 5 minutes. So I think I have everything. Just let me know when or how.
Send it to Frode and me first, and then we'll send it on to Allison.
Dini, before you go really quickly, I'm so grateful for the last bit of the conversation today. I had a FaceTime meeting with a friend I haven't seen in a while. We did our masters together in human-computer interaction, and she hasn't worked on a headset. So I was sharing, and she asked me, what's the benefit? And currently, the benefit is just a larger screen, right? So what we're talking about is you get up and go for your information is going to be really, really interesting. It was so nice we talked about it today.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. See you later.
Yeah, see you later. Dini, we're going to wrap up too. See you on Wednesday. And there's no meeting on Monday, guys. Until 6th of January, we're off.
Happy holidays.
Sounds good. Merry Christmas. Happy New
Merry
Year.
Christmas. Happy New Year. Any famous last words, guys?
Hey, y'all watch this? I don't know.
I went to the 50th of Computer Lib on Friday. That was a lot of fun.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of people. Well, it was unofficial. It was just a fellow who helped got really close to and helped out Ted Nelson to pack up and move back to New Jersey, but also like got a lot of information out of him. Sort of took it upon himself to make a kind of an exhibit and collect sort of interesting minds around the Bay Area to kind of look back and look forward. It was really fun. I took my copy and got everybody to sign it.
Cool.
But
Is he still in Japan or is he back at the farm? Do you know?
Ted, I'm not sure where his current whereabouts. Nobody brought up sort of trying to talk to him or anything like that. I'm not sure when or how he's in Japan. But yeah, it was nice. There may be some people that I will strike up conversations with and might be of interest to bring into this community, but I need to have a little bit more conversation with them to see whether it makes sense.
Cool. On that note, have a look at our website again. The futuretextlab.info. It's been updated a bit to make it cleaner for people to learn what we're about.
Cool.
If there's some suggestions you have, please do obviously give them. And talk to you guys when we do. And this is all very nice. Andrew, your transition to a free and independent thinker. over the holidays will be interesting. But as I said in the beginning of today, I say it again, you're welcome here anytime. It's really wonderful when you're with us. All right. Happy New Year, everyone. Merry Christmas. Bye for now.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Enjoy.